Okay, so we're learning the Kuntus Hechaltzu from 1899. We're on page 89 in my text. It's the introduction to chapters 12 and 13. And here, the Rebbe Rashab is going to talk about two ways of serving Hashem. One is b'simcha, and one is b'meridus. Meridus literally means bitterness, but I like the translation frustration, the bounce back, the discipline. So that's chapter 13. That'll be after Yom Tov Mitzvah Hashem. And this is chapter 12, B'Simcha. But let me read the introduction. In the following two chapters, the Rebbe Rashab suspends his discussion of yeshus, of ego, as a blockage, of course, to serving God and causing hatred towards another person, another Jew, and introduces two positive approaches to avodah. In chapter 12, he discusses divine service motivated by joy, meditating on the greatness of Hashem and the wondrous expression of that greatness by his creation, yesh mi'ayin ex nihilo, bringing the universe into existence from absolute nothingness. That motivates one to rejoice in his creation. Alternatively, one can evoke joy in his divine service by contemplating God's essential greatness, how at the same time he utterly transcends all existence. So this is going to be the thrust of chapter 12, which we're going to learn soon. In chapter 13, the Rebbe Rashab focuses on divine service, characterized by one's humility and anguish at his lowly spiritual state. The key to such service is being a master of accounts. In Hebrew, or it is Mora in actually Aramaic, is Mora de Chushbina. Mora is the word mar in Hebrew, and Chushbana is the Hebrew word cheshbon, which means like an accountant, a master of accounting on your own situation, making a careful reckoning of one's actions and the motives behind them. When doing so, one comes to realize that his service is lacking, not only in an absolute sense, that is, relating to the level of divine service that he ought to render, but also in relative terms. Even when accounting for any mortal's innate frailties and imperfection, a person can see how his own efforts are inadequate. This realization evokes humility and anguish. So the second one is about yira, meridus. He used the word meridus. And we'll get to that when we get to that. Let's now learn inside the text. Chapter 12, Yud Beis. V'hinei kasher yedei Hashem b'avodah yeshem beis avodah oifani avodah. When a person knows that in regard to serving Hashem, there are two details, two styles. Aleph, the first, avodah b'simcha, to serve Hashem with real simcha, real joy. V'hainu, when a person reflects, meditates well on the greatness of God, number one, a person reflects on Hashem's greatness vis-a-vis the creation ex nihilo. Hashem made from absolute nothingness a world. The Levad Zois, Masha Etzem, Inyan Bria, Yesh Mi'ayin, Hun Inyan Nifla, in addition to the fact that the very idea of Yesh Mi'ayin, ex nihilo, or creation ex nihilo, is a wondrous idea. She'ein le'adam shum tzir al zeklal, that man has no imagery of this at all. There is no real example, and the closest we can get to it, Moshe, is taking, take a seed and put it into the ground, and the seed disintegrates, and from that sprouts forth vegetation. So that's the mushal it's brought for yesh mi'ayin. But let me ask you, is the seed in its disintegrated form nothing? Of course it's something. It's not a seed the way it was a seed before the disintegration, but it's a seed as a seed is in disintegration, but there's something there. So that's not real yesh mi'ayin. That's what we call in Chassidus yesh miyesh. Something from something else. A baby, a fetus. A fetus is not coming from nothing. A fetus is coming from the sperm that the husband gives the woman, and then from that comes, so it's yesh miyesh. It's not yesh mi'ayin. So that's why the Rebbe says, and it says this in Chassidus always, that there is no real exact example for the concept of yesh me'ayin. Ayin means zero, gur nicht, efes. But it's as close as we could get to the concept. So the Rebbe says, when you think about the idea itself, the how Hashem creates the world, yesh mi'ayin, it should blow you away. Because it's so beyond our reality. It kind of contradicts our reality, and yet that's the way God made the world. Wow. So if Hashem, if this is what God is, and this is the way He makes the world, it causes in us a feeling, an appreciation of His awesomeness, or better, or another word, His godless. Right? What did you say this morning in Dalfin and Yisir? L'cho Hashem hagedula, v'hagvura, v'atiferes, v'hanetzach, v'hoy, hagedula. Gedula. What's Gedula? Gedula is, wow. Let's go further. If you want to see more about this whole idea, see the Maimer Samach the Samach, which is a Maimer that Rebbe Rashab said at the Simcha, I think, of his sister, one of Richness Zion, in the year 1897, B'tchilosa, in the beginning of that discourse that he himself said, so he's sending us there if you want more information on this concept. Okay. Oizois, yesh bezeh plois. There's additional wonder associated with this. Yesh mi'ayin. The yadua, it's known, the bria yesh mi'ayin, hu mibchinas richuk ha'erech. That the creation via ex nihilo is done in a distant form. He explains, this is the difference between what we call cause and effect and creation ex nihilo. The ilav olo, cause and effect, hu b'chinas hashpa b'kiruf. The way that the cause impacts the effect is in a close manner. He'll say in a moment, Sha'ila mislabish ba'olu. The cause invests itself into the effect. V'ha'olu, and the effect, margish esi losoi, feels, relates to its cause. V'lochein, therefore, ha'olu hu be'erech ha'ila. The effect is within the confines of the cause, right? So take seichel and midos very quickly. Intellect and emotions. The relationship between the two is a close relationship. You think, you understand, you feel. You have an emotion. So the manner in which the cause, i.e. the seichel, impacts Isser, don't fall asleep. The ulul, and the way the ulul doesn't the way the ulul, the effect, the emotion is motivated by the cause is in a close relationship. They're tight. They get each other. Mashen came. Look into the text. Conversely, misavos yesh mi'ayin, when it comes to the creation ex nihilo, shayisavis hu be'ein aroich. Moshe, the creation ex nihilo is what we call ad infinitum, which means There is no comparison. Yes, Moshe.
It's amazing. This sounds like we just learned today's Tanya.
Yeah.
Max, I was going to say the same thing.
Yeah, it is. Let's continue. So the Hisavos, the creation, ex nihilo, is not in a close manner. God, the creator, which is the nothingness in this case, creates the yesh, which is the world. Then what relationship do they have? Nothing. So the way that Hashem makes the yesh mi'ayin, the manner of which he uses to make the yesh mi'ayin, is what we call rachok, distant, not karov, not close. V'im kein hu hashpa b'chinas richuk erech. Therefore, the hashpa, the effluence, coming from the creator, from the ayin to the yesh, is in a manner, in a style that we call distant. What does that mean, Moshe, practically? That the creator hides himself from the creation. In the mashal of the Ilah Va'olah of Seichel and Midos, the Seichel doesn't hide itself from the Midos, the intellect doesn't hide itself from the emotion, the intellect inserts itself into the emotion. The intellect wants to infuse the emotion with its intellectual ability, right? It wants the emotion to be more intellectual. And the emotion says, hey guy, I'm emotional, but I get you. They're talking to each other. With Yesh Mi'ayin, there's no talking to each other. There's a creator who's completely of a different makeup than the creation. And therefore, but yet the creator makes the creation. So how does he do it? He does it in a way that's distant. He's not involved. Let me say it better. Of course Hashem is involved in the world. But the way he's involved in the world is in a nonchalant way, in a sense. It's like, stand back. And this is what is perplexing about it and what we don't understand. How can you create and not be involved in the creation? I've thought about this many times in my life. Out of sight, out of mind, That's the way it is. When you're not there, when you're not involved, it makes the relationship cooler, and sometimes, you see someone 20, 30, 40 years later, a roommate, a buddy, and they're not warm. You would think you want to hug each other, wow, and reminisce and just schmooze. And the guy just sees you and says, how you doing? Oh, nice to see you. And he goes the other way. What happened? Out of mind, out of sight. There's no real kiruv and yachas in the relationship because you were not invested in it. He wasn't invested. You don't get anywhere from that. Yeah, it might be pleasant. In other words, a yachas needs to be flamed. You have to feed it, and when you feed it, it's active. And by the way, just some marriage counseling advice for all of us and others. You got to keep a marriage fresh. It can be 60, 70, 80. If you want to be in a relationship, you have to work on it. It's not something that happens. The Rebbe, Dr. Weiss from Chicago, would say over how the Rebbe's 10, 15 minutes having a glass of tea with his wife was like putting on tefillin. But it took time. He had to leave his office, go home, have a cup. You know what I'm saying? Okay, it's the mental thing to do. He's in his office all day. He doesn't see his wife. But I'm saying it's an activity. It's an activity that takes work. The Eibishter, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, in a sense, creates the world and says, goodbye, Charlie. I'm here, but I'm here from a distance. But he's not here from a distance. He's here the whole time. But the manner in which the hashpah comes is in a manner of distance. That's the nakud of what we're learning here. We're talking about the hashpah. Don't make a mistake. The effluence. We're not talking about the fact that God is in the world every moment. God recreates the world every moment. We're talking about in what manner does he recreate the world? In a standoffish manner. Let's continue. That's exactly what I just said. You must say that the godly force creating the creature is here constantly. And so too is in the existence in the existence and what exists. This is what we're learning in Tanya, exactly. If it would depart for a moment, God forbid, it will become naught. Why? Now he has a nuance here. So you're a philosopher. Listen to the nuance. Why would existence not remain in existence? Moshe, you said you learned it in Tanya. Why? Says that Rashab, based on that Tanya that we're learning now, in Ikeres HaKodesh Chav, because it's a Dover Chodesh. It's new, it's a Chidush. Anything that is new, that is Chidush, Chadash, must have the one who makes it new constantly in it. V'im lav is batla chidush. And if not, the chidush, the novelty, would cease to be. And he says again here, and this is conversely opposite of cause and effect. For example, intellect and emotions. You can have an emotion, gam, next page, when you forget the reason. In other words, a person has a feeling of awe or love or mercy, and it was caused by an understanding of a certain situation. Years go by, they still are stimulated emotionally in that particular way, but they forget the reason why. Or even if they don't forget it, it's not vibrant, it's not active. That says the Rebbe exactly. You know why? Because the midah is not a chidush. The midah, the emotion, is not something new. It existed in some form in the intellectual realm before. So since it just was a matter of being revealed from the intellect, even when the cause goes to sleep, the effect remains. Conversely, it's not so with the yesh mi'ayin. That's what he says. The hainu mipnei sha'midah ba'etzem ein a davar chodesh. Because the midah, the very emotion, is not a novelty, is not something new. And it was also, existed also beforehand. Therefore, the midah, the emotion, can exist even when we forget its reason, why it came to begin with. Says the Rashab now in a parenthesis, nevertheless, it's not that it forgot, it forgot in the external the reason why the emotion is here, but in Bepnimius, Behelim, he says, in a concealed manner, the reason is always in the midah. He says he'll explain that. Kamishkosav Mokamach has explained elsewhere, I'm not going to go into it. Mashenkin, conversely, Yesh Mi'ayin. Liyoishizuhu, Hishchachu, since it's a novelty, Tzorach Liyois HaMachadish B'tuvah, HaMachadish Tomid, therefore the creator has to always be there. Then and only then will it be in existence. What do we understand from all this? So we have two polar opposites. On one hand, that the manner in which the ayin, God, creates the yesh, the existence, is in a manner, in a style that's called distant. Simultaneously, nevertheless, this koyach is constantly in the creature, in the creation. If it were to go away for a moment, creation would cease to be. As it says, forever, your word God stands in the heaven. And the point of Yesh Mi'ayin obligates both together. In other words, if you understand Yesh Mi'ayin properly, says the Rebbe, this is not an oxymoron. It sounds that way. right? But it's not. It is this way. Or when you meditate on God's awesomeness on its own, in other words, not now he goes to another point. Before he spoke about the meditation of God's effluence, his impact. Now we talk about the very meditation on God himself, that God is awesome and there's no mind and no one can comprehend him. A person delves into these thoughts deeply, to the point where this becomes absorbed very well by the person, to the point where the actual emanation of Hashem, with its awesomeness, its greatness, and its exaltedness, meir begili benafshai, it illuminates the person's soul. He says in Yiddish, the Reichkeit from Elikus. This is a beautiful expression, Moshe. Reich in Yiddish, it means rich. Reichkeit means the richness. What does it mean, the richness of Elikus? Okay, you see, this is a classical Chabad term you won't find in other. They have other terms. The Reichkeit from Elikus, the richness of godliness. What does that mean? It means like the schmaltz of godliness. What do you mean the schmaltz of godliness? Or I like to say the kishkus of godliness. The very essence of God. The Reichkeit Isser, there is doing things correctly. A is A and B is B. The seats belong here, right? And everything has to be proper. That's not the Reichkeit. That's being proper, and it's very important and very nice. The Reichkeit is that when you come into a shul and you feel elated, maybe the benches are messed up, and maybe the Siddurim are all over, but somehow when you come into the shul and you daven in the shul and you have the experience, you walk out on cloud 9. And for many that come here for Tishrei, since it is Tishrei, you know what's going on in 770. It's Eretz Yisrael. Tishrei in Crown Heights is taken over by Eretz Yisrael. On one hand, Baruch Hashem. Now, you go in there, that's if you can get through the doors. If you can succeed to get through the doors and you don't mind schwitzing and being pushed around. So what's going on? For these people, for the people that have this experience and want this, it's the Reichkeit. For them, it's beyond, the Siddur and the Machzer and it's something greater. It's a greater sum than the pieces. So when we talk about godliness, inspiring us, and this is, by the way, something, Yoini, that we lack many times. And we need to work on. In other words, not to suffice with the technicalities. The technicalities of Yiddishkeit, the halacha, is of most importance. But if it ends there, you miss the boat. You really miss the boat. Because then your Yiddishkeit is you're a technocrat, And by the way, the result of that is that the kids and grandkids say, go somewhere. We're not interested in that. You were interested in technicalities. We're not. So you have to find a way. And I go back to that story, Taka, in your shul, in Karlbach shul, where I met the Bucky in Tanakh, the Sephardi, that I'm awed by his knowledge. Rabbi Sudri. And I see him Friday night in the Karlbach shul before Mincha. Now that I'm there is that I just took a liking to the music. I'm not a Karlbachnik, but it just spoke to me and it brought out certain emotions. I really felt great, and I really wanted to, benefit and have that. Okay, but what is he doing there? So he told me, you see my son? I asked him. I want him to be excited about Yiddishkeit. And I've been to Sudri Shul where he davened. I think it's next door, right? And right, yeah. And I also checked that out. I wanted to get the feeling, what's going on there? How does that feel? And it was really wonderful. It really was. But it's different than the vibes in the Karlbach Shul. And he felt, for whatever reason, that his son is not, he's not gravitating. He's not gravitating. So he said, let's try this. So this is what we call about the Reichkeit from Elikus. The Reichkeit, the richness of godliness, is not the technicality of... Now, I'm not saying there aren't some technocrats who by them, when they learn a piece of Gemara about one ox goring another ox, they jump and they get excited. That exists too. I'm not going to be naive and say it doesn't exist, and it does. And God bless those people. But that's far and few. It's far and few. So the Reichkeit from Melikus is, the Rebbe says, when you meditate and you reflect on how God creates the world and these details, which is real deep thoughts, then you say to yourself, wow, Hashem made me in this world where on the one hand he's here and on the other hand he's like, not that he's not here, but the way he creates it is in a manner of distance, as we explained. That, and you think about it, then you say, hey, what am I doing for you, Hashem? You didn't have to make me. You made me. You chose to make me. Okay? You gave the blessing to my parents when they cohabitated that I should come out. I didn't have to come out. And I didn't have to come out this way. And here I am. You say, wow, let me think about this. This is mechayev me. It's like with the war in Eretz Yisrael. People get up from America. This guy, Aidan Alexander, was 550 days or so in captivity. They just named a street in Tenafly, New Jersey after him yesterday. He's going back to fight. Amazing. Amazing to me. That's the Reichkeit. In other words, it's not a technical thing. Hey, I gave my time. I almost died. I was abused 550 days. Let me get out of this, excuse the expression, hellhole. Let me get out of here. Let me live. I gave my time. He's going back. And I don't know his cheshbainis, but I'm just talking out loud. There's something in him driving him to give back. I know Chabadniks. This Shabbos in Potomac, Maryland, the rabbi's son, full beard, with a kapota, married, real Lubavitcher. He's a lieutenant. You couldn't get into the shul. They heard that he's speaking. You couldn't get into the shul. And he told over things. He's one of the 8 that started the Hashmonayim battalion for the Haredi soldiers. And he broke it down for them, explained to them what's the issue there, why Haredim are not giving. And he says if the IDF would change a few things in their mentality, they would sign up gladly. And he explained, and I'm thinking, here is this like a Lubavitcher who learned in Lubavitch Chabad yeshivas, where you're not encouraged to go to college, you're not encouraged to go to the IDF, and he gets up and he joins. He doesn't take off his beard. He keeps his beard. He keeps his kapota, and he's a soldier. Again, I'm not saying everyone should do that. You'll ask your rabbi, your mashpia, your rav. I'm just saying that there's something that goes beyond the technicality, and that's what the Rebbe Rashab is saying here. The Reichkeit from Elikus. We need the richness of godliness for inspiration, not the technicalities of godliness, because you won't get that inspiration. Let's continue. I want to finish the paragraph.
Rabbi, but how would Reichkeit be different than Erlich?
Then what? I couldn't hear you. Then what? He's frozen. For us,
what would be the difference between Reichkeit and Erlichkeit?
Ehrlichkeit means earnestness. It's very different. Reichkeit means richness. There's a difference. Earnestness is earnest. Reichkeit is rich, gravy, schmaltz. It's a Ehrlichkeit, which is a great word, and is to me, it would fall more into the technicality. Ich bin ehrlich. I'm technical and I'm religious. Ich bin ehrlich. It doesn't mean yet you're exciting. It doesn't mean you're thriving. You're surviving. You know? What did Alan Dershowitz write? The surviving American Jew. And I say, Alan, you got to write a book called The Thriving American Jew. And I don't think he can write that book for various reasons. I'm not going to go into that now. But okay. Only someone who's thriving in his Yiddishkeit with God, with Hashem, can write The Thriving American Jew. They're surviving. And surviving is very important. Ehrlichkeit. Well, again, I don't want to... Ehrlichkeit, since you mentioned, is gewaltig. It's great. It's very important, but it's technical. Let me just continue because I got to finish. The Rebbe says, the Rashab says, when you will meditate on these ideas, you'll have simcha in your soul. This is the joy of the soul in God, in God our Creator. And you'll cleave and attach and latch on to Hashem. Overall, the Rebbe says this is what we call the service out of love, serving God out of love. This is the attachment of the soul, having simcha in God. For example, the simcha of the lover for the beloved. That joy that the lover has for the beloved, you will feel in your soul. You understand? The simcha of real love is deep in the heart. It's not about, here, I bought you a gift. That's the externality. It's not even about even the intimacy, you could say. It's much deeper than an intimacy. It's something in you that, they call it, infatuation. They have all kinds of, words. But our Chazal, use the word simchas ha'oyuv, the simcha of the lover for the beloved. And whatever that is, in this case, it's HaKadosh Baruch Hu. That when you come in contact with a godly experience, you become happy. You mamish become the simcha. That's what we're talking about. Chevra, we're going to resume Rosh Chodesh Cheshvan. I don't know the date now. We'll figure it out. And meanwhile, everyone should have an easy fast, a Gemach Simcha Tova, and Mashiach Shastaka Kumin. Yeah. And please, again, make the best. It's a long day. It's a day of davening 24/7, 24 hours. So take a paragraph or two. Put your talis over your head. Don't let your kids interfere. Don't let your wife interfere. Don't let your rabbi interfere. And just think about the words, what they mean, and think a little bit, meditate, reflect. And then your davening will be more animated, okay? And then come Sukkot, of course, with Samachta, we'll be in touch. Sei gesund, good Yom Tov to everyone. Bye-bye. Good Yom Tov. Thank you. Shalom. Gamatim. Bye-bye.